The watchword here is informality, okay? You want this to be a conversation. Joe has done a great job of pulling together some notes, and I'll just quickly go through that. We've started our 2016-17 academic year. We've had a great start last week. Women's soccer won 2 matches, and this weekend both soccers and volleyball will be in action. We had, as everybody can understand, a really good year last year. Football and soccer going to play for championships and 3 ACC championships as well. We also had a 5th place finish in the Capital One Cup for men's sports, which is, we're very, very proud of that. It's the highest we've ever done. But we're also incredibly proud of the great work that our student athletes did in the classroom. We had a record year as it relates to APR and GSR, and a number of teams set personal bests as it relates to GPAs during either the fall or spring semester. So that was important. IPTAY had another record-breaking year. Annual fund numbers over $29 million, total gifts of 56.1. That's cash and pledges, moving forward. So that's great. I mean, you put the last 2 years together, they're nearly $120 million in the last 2 years that they've raised, and that's so important for us. And to top off the year, Brianna Rollins won a gold medal. And that we're hopefully Brianna will stop by sometime this fall, and we'll have a great opportunity to recognize her. We've sold more football tickets than we've ever sold before. Over in Little John, with the rebuilding of that facility, we've sold more than we did the last year that we were there. Right now, the seat selection is going on for that process, and by all accounts, that's been really well done, not only by our ticket office and IPTAY, but I think our ticket holders have enjoyed the opportunity to go in and have a little skin in the game of saying, okay, I'd really like to sit over here. Well, if you couldn't get the seat you wanted there, well, there's another side of the floor. Do you want to sit over there? So they've had some opportunity to kind of pick their own seats. One of the negatives that's happened because of a lot of the growth and building, not only that athletics has had, but the campus itself, is we've lost 2,000 parking spaces. So one of the things that we worked on a lot over the course of since last December was finding alternative parking locations. And certainly our friends at New Spring Church and their new development just off Highway 93 is going to come into play. We have an arrangement with them. And then we created Seneca Creek Meadows, which is just down off Seneca Creek Road. And both of those areas will be serviced by a transit, by buses that will run counterflow on Highway 93, much like we had those cones set up a year ago for any of you who may have come in that area. So it's about a 4-minute ride from either of those locations to the transit hub, which is just down at the end of the road out in front of McFadden here, our transit hub, which is where a lot of the folks who had been in the old parking lot 13 that now house our soccer practice fields, that's where they would have been anyway. So we think that's going to be a real plus for us. We want to keep that fan experience at the top of our priority levels as we move into any decision that we have. Our facility push continues moving ahead. I know you've probably been in Little John. You guys have had an opportunity to see the Football Operations Center as well. We're moving ahead through the state process with our tennis facility, and when it's all said and done, in a little under 4 years, we will have done about $176 million worth of facility upgrades. No state tax dollars, no student fees, all private gifts. And I think that's a testament to our fan base and the people who support our programs. Very, very proud of that. When football moves out of the West End Zone, we're going to repurpose that, thanks to a gift from the Michael Nieri family, one of our cornerstone partners. We're going to make that the Nieri Family Academic Enrichment Center. So we'll move those services from Vickery Hall on campus, we'll move them to the West End Zone, and they'll get about 10,000 more square feet, not only to do academic work, but work with Dr. Loretto Jackson and the Student Athlete Wellness and Development area. So all of that will be centered inside that second floor area of the West End Zone. Very excited about that moving forward as well. So that's kind of some of the things that we've been doing. It's been a great summer, quick one, but now we're pretty excited about what's going to happen 8 days from now in Auburn, Alabama. Should be an exciting game.
Dan, what's going to become of Vickery once they move out of there to West End? Is that going to be an adjunct academic facility?
Well, we're working with the institution right now, with Clemson University and the provost office. There are great needs throughout the campus, and how we can take that building that's set up for academic services and utilize that for our entire student body.
Obviously, one of your main focuses has been getting the facilities all up to date, built. At any point within the next 2 years, would you think about adding a men or a women's sport, or is that completely off the table?
No, it's not off the table. It's something that we continually look at and we assess. Certainly the ACC Network will give us, in time, some additional resources for which to work. But we want to make sure that we're doing what works at Clemson. And given our physical setup, our geographic setup, some things may work better than others. So we have a small team, within our administrative staff that, occasionally will go through and look at various options. If certain things happen, would we want to consider this or consider another sport? So that's a process that's been going on for a couple of years. But as of now, there's been no movement to make any changes.
Speaking of the new ACC Network, can you elaborate a little bit about that, how much it's going to benefit Clemson both financially and from an exposure standpoint? And why is it taking so long to launch? I believe it's 2019. Was that because of contractual obligations?
Well, I think if you go back to any network that has been launched, there's been a window of time between when it was announced and when it actually launched. So this is no different than the Big Ten or the SEC when they were first publicized. I think that it's going to certainly increase our exposure, our reach as a conference, and that will help us. And the resources that it will provide will also be a big plus. I mean, as we're going to touch $100 million in our budget for the first time ever here at Clemson. And as our programs continue to grow and success continues to happen, the resources that come from areas outside our sphere, meaning IPTAY, ticket holders, et cetera, are going to become increasingly important. So I think the timing of the network and when those resources will begin, which will probably be at the early part of the next decade, 20 and 21, we'll really see some significant dollars coming in. That'll line up very well for us.
Speaking of the ACC, there's been a lot of talk lately about 8 or 9 game conference schedule. Where does Clemson sit, with all that?
I mean, we are firmly entrenched in the 8-game camp. I mean, I think it's worked well for Clemson. We've had a scheduling philosophy that has, not only with our rivalry game with the University of South Carolina, but gone out and played top-level opponents. And we think that that's a real positive. We think that's very important for us. So we're in that camp. It's been, as you guys know, an incredibly close vote over the last couple of years when it's been a topic of conversation. But we continue to work with some of our schools that we know are of a like mind to make sure that we continue to stay in that area. It's also important for us, for the community, for the region, that we have 7 home games. And 7 home games is much easier to achieve for us with an 8-game conference schedule.
Do you think, as you look ahead to it, though, that this conference, go ahead, I want my thought. Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask cross-division rivals. I was reading something the other day, Duke and Wake Forest, but Clemson has Georgia Tech every year. Miami has Florida State. Would there be any thought of maybe kind of just eliminating that?
Well, I think that there's some cross-division rivalries that have long-standing relationships, such as Florida and Miami. That was one of the things that, they had played for 30 or 40 years prior to both joining the ACC. So they wanted to make sure to keep that game going. And by setting them up in other divisions and that being a permanent opponent, they were able to capture that while still keeping them in different divisions. That was, I think, the original thought. back in 2003 or 4, whenever Miami was brought into the league. The other cross-division rivals, Clemson and Georgia Tech, I mean, we've played for a long time. I think it's a really good regional rivalry, and I think North Carolina State and North Carolina, I believe, are their permanent opponents. So even though they're in opposite divisions, they almost need to play each and every year. So that was part of the permanent opponent piece when you set up the divisions, was to keep those rivalries together. I don't think you could do away with them, all just in one fell swoop. There would need to be some other, whether it's a division, people moving divisions or other things that would look at that. But right now, ACC football is as strong as it's ever been, and we've got an awful lot of national exposure. I don't see the need at this point in time to look to tinker with that at this point in time. Now, our new television agreement and the network has put a couple of covenants in as it relates to playing Power 5 schools, so we'll have to work hard to make sure that we adhere to those guidelines that were agreed to.
I know you're meeting in October as well, so I have to meet in October. And sorry. And I've also heard, though, that you guys don't have until December to make a decision. So do you think that decision is going to be made in October, or do you think y'all guys have to carry it out to December?
I really think we'll make it in October because there's really no scheduled time for us to get together again. I think it was when we had our conference call a couple of weeks ago, I think people understood that this is a decision of such magnitude that we really need to be in the room together to talk it through. And while a conference call is a convenient avenue for many decisions that need to be made within a conference, something like this, I think, people need to be in a room and have the ability to talk to one another.
Speaking of that setting, you've been on the college football playoff committee since its inception. How much has your experience on the committee influenced your philosophy as far as the 8 versus 9 game conference schedule? Obviously, you know the criteria that they use better than anyone.
Well, the criteria, and interestingly, I just came back from a meeting yesterday that we had, but the criteria is pretty clear. The conference championships are very, very high on the list. Head-to-head games against other great opponents, high on the list. Having a schedule that allows you to be in the upper quartile as you compare schedules is really important. So all of those factors come together, but you don't single one out. Okay, you look at the entire body of work, and the year goes along. Some people might look at a game early on in the year as not being that important or as good of an opponent, and then you come to December and you find out, wow, that was a really good opponent, and maybe even a top 25 opponent. So, those types of things, strength of schedules morph during the year, and that's an important part of what we do. So I don't know that there's one dynamic to say this number of games is better than that number of games as it relates to the college football playoff. You've seen teams that have played 9 conference games make the playoff. You've seen teams with 8 make the playoffs, because I think it really looked at their entire season together. But it's important for Clemson and for where I sit in representing the institution to my ACC brethren, that we look at 8 conference games.
I guess the point of my question was that with an 8-game conference schedule, obviously allows you a little bit more flexibility as far as your non-conference schedule goes and who to schedule.
Sure.
And obviously, the committee does value those when you go up against a top 25 non-conference opponent as opposed to a lower tier opponent or an FCS opponent. So does that influence your philosophy at all as far as preferring the 8-game schedule?
No, the 8-game schedule is right for Clemson and where we are. Certainly having the ability to be inside the college football playoff, if we're successful, is important. But if we lost a couple of games or whatever along the way in a given year, it's still important to have 8 conference games, because that's a better avenue to 7 home football games here in our upstate region.
Speaking of the college football playoff meetings, I know you can't tell us exactly what you guys talked about, but was there some things maybe you guys adjusted or talked about maybe to do better this year as you go through the whole process again?
You know, we had a presentation by the folks who give us our data and a lot of the analytics, and we talked through some things that we really liked from a presentation perspective and were helpful to us. They came in and listened to that, and I'm sure we'll make a few tweaks. But this was a meeting for us to just kind of get to know some of the new members. Rob Mullins, Jeff Bowers, Herb Duramity are all new to the committee. Kirby Hocutt is our new chairman. So it was a good time to be able to just reinstall our principles and our process of how we're going to move forward and make those selections this year. Nothing earth-shattering changed as it related to the process.
There's always a lot of debate over whether the most deserving team should get into the playoff or whether it's who's perceived as the strongest team. That could be particularly relevant for Clemson this season if it ends up with just one loss, as opposed to maybe an undefeated Big 12 or Pac-12 team that's perceived as not as strong. Can you tell us your personal philosophy as to which one should take precedence?
You know, I think that you almost need to get a thesaurus out to talk about the difference between deserving and best. As a committee, we always look at it as the 4 best teams. And, you know, I think it's others that may, interject deserving. But we have the criteria, we move through that, we talk about the teams, we watch the games. I mean, that's another big piece of it. We watch the games and understand how a season has progressed for a particular team. So we look at it as the 4 best teams at the end of the year are going to get together and compete for the playoff.
Are there any new athletic projects that we haven't heard about or are on the books, or any facilities?
I think that once we get, hopefully you've heard about the redo of the IPTE Center. IPTE will have that project, and it's moving through the governmental process right now alongside our tennis project. We're also going to do some things in this building and in Jervey once we have some of the other coaches. Like when basketball moves out, that's going to create some space. We need to do some things to get ready for the ACC Network in our video area. So we'll look at that. And we want to make the best use of this building here and of Jervey because this will be the administrative home of our athletic program for the foreseeable future.
Are there any future plans once you get through this season to look at parking and maybe try and find extra spaces or the parking garage? Just kind of what the thoughts are there?
I think it's kind of like, brushing your teeth in the morning. We're always looking for places and new avenues to help create a better parking experience here and game day experience. I mean, just something that we do each and every day. And we continue to reach out to different entities to see if things are available for us. We have the project just over here between the SO Club and Little John. That's going to be not only a park, but it will be an area where cars can park. The areas that we talked about. We just continue to look for opportunities to make that game day experience better. And that I don't know that it will ever stop, but more importantly, I don't think it ever should stop because that's what makes this place special.
Now that Little John is nearing completion, have you sat down with Brad and said, here's the expectation for this year, or has that conversation not happened? Or
we have really good coaches, and they're all really intelligent, and Brad puts more pressure on himself and his staff than I could, and I wouldn't do that. I mean, we just know that we expect to be successful in everything that we do. Now, some programs are at different stages of that levels of excellence than others, but we want to see progress and continued movement in all of our programs to being excellent.